The living room was bright and wide, with glass walls that looked over the city of Lagos. Benjamin walked in holding his wife Adana's hand. He stopped when he saw the old woman in his own wheelchair, waiting. Madame Sarah's silver hair was tied with a simple scarf. Her eyes were tired but kind. "Benja," she began, her voice shaking. Benjamin's jaw tightened. He dropped Adana's hand and marched forward. The housekeepers froze by the door. The air felt heavy, like rain about to fall. "Why can't you leave me alone?" Benjamin said, his voice hard. "Why can't you let me live my life in peace? I'm ashamed to call you my mother. Stop embarrassing me." The words hit the room like thunder. Madame Sarah's fingers trembled on the armrest. She tried to smile, the way mothers do when they want to keep peace for their children. But the smile broke, her eyes filled with tears. She pressed a hand to her chest. "Benjamin, have you forgotten? I raised you alone. Your father died when you were 5. At 10, they kidnapped you, and I fought them with my bare hands. The bullet hit me. That is why I am in this chair. I sold my land. I sold my jewelry. I sold everything to send you to school. Today you are a software engineer, and now I am trash to you because of this woman you hold like a trophy." Adana stood straight. Her face was calm, like a wall. Madame Sarah turned to her. "Adana, I am the one who begged your parents to let you marry my son. I thought we were family." No one moved. No one spoke. Madame Sarah put her bag on her lap and began to turn the wheelchair. "Since you have taken my son and denied me the joy of the child I gave my life to save, you will never know the joy of parenthood unless I have wronged you." Her voice cracked. "If I am wrong, let God judge me. If I am right, let God judge you." She headed for the door, toward the marble steps at the entrance. Benjamin did not move. Adana did not move. The housekeepers looked at the floor. The front wheel caught the edge of the top stair. The chair tipped. Everything slowed. Madame Sarah's eyes widened. Her hand slipped. The wheelchair lifted then. Earlier that morning, the bus from the village rolled into Lagos just after sunrise. The city hummed awake, hawkers calling. In the back seat sat an old woman with a white lace, neat scarf, and a stubborn heart. Madame Sarah clutched a small nylon bag. Inside were her prayer book, her phone with a cracked screen, and 2 pieces of bread wrapped in paper. Her fingers traced the edges of the phone. No new messages, no missed calls. She had called her son for days. No answer. She leaned back and closed her eyes. She remembered the small house in the village, the empty compound, the night air. How she lay awake and wondered if her son was well, if he was eating, if he was praying. She remembered how the neighbors looked at her with pity as she asked the chairman to borrow a wheelchair for her trip. "Mama, Lagos is far," one woman had said. "Rest." But a mother's heart does not rest. A mother's heart moves, even when the legs cannot. At the estate gate, the security men straightened. The old woman in a loaned wheelchair spoke with a soft voice that carried power. "Please, I am here to see my son, Engineer Benjamin." "Madam, do you have an appointment?" one asked gently. "I am the appointment," she said, and smiled. "He is my boy." They called the house. No one picked up. They called again. Still no answer. After a long pause, the guard opened the gate. "Mama, please, go in, sit in the shade. Someone will attend to you." She rolled slowly into the compound, past trimmed flowers, and a fountain that threw little rainbows into the air. The house was large, with strong lines and clean glass. It was the kind of house she had pictured when she sold her last piece of land. "He will build," she had told herself. "He will become." She parked under the balcony and waited. 30 minutes, 1 hour, 2. No one came. She did not complain. She prayed. "God, keep my boy from pride. Keep my heart from anger." At last a housekeeper came out, holding a tray. "Mama, please, take water." "Thank you, my child," she said. "Is my son at home?" The girl glanced back toward the door, unsure. Madame Adana said Oga will soon come. Madame Sarah nodded and waited again. She looked around the house and remembered the past mud floors, a broken radio, and the tin roof that sang during the rains. She remembered the day Benjamin came home at 10 with dust on his face and fear in his eyes. She remembered running after the kidnappers, screaming like a lioness. She remembered the flash, the heat, the fall. She remembered waking up with legs that refused to obey. She remembered choosing joy anyway. A sleek black SUV pulled into the driveway. The door opened. Benjamin stepped out in a crisp shirt. He looked taller than the last time she saw him. Stronger. A Lagos man now. Adana stepped out too, wearing a fitted dress and gold earrings that caught the Sunday. Madame Sarah's heart danced. She lifted her hand and waved. Benjamin looked up, saw her, and his face changed. He whispered something to Adana. She squeezed his hand. They walked in together, back to the living room. The marble floor shone like water. A tiny scratch ran along the coffee table like a line on a palm. The air conditioner hummed. It was the kind of living room where people whispered even when they wore loud clothes. Benjamin stood in the center, fists by his sides. "Why are you here?" he asked. "Why do you keep calling? I gave you money last month. What more do you want?" "You gave the driver money," Madame Sarah said softly. "You have not called me in 3 months. I did not come for money. I came for you." Adana spoke for the first time. Her voice was polite, but cold. "Mama, with respect, this is not the village. Benjamin is busy. There is order here. If you need something, you should tell me. I manage his time." Madame Sarah turned, surprise washing over her face. "You manage? My son? I am his wife," Adana said. "I protect him." "Protect him from who?" the old woman asked. "From his mother? The one who bled for him?" Benjamin stepped forward. "Enough," he said. "Stop making a scene." "A scene?" Madame Sarah's laugh was small and sad. "My son thinks my love is a scene." She began to shake. "Benjamin, do you remember our old house? Do you remember the night we had no kerosene and we boiled Gary like soup and pretended it was jollof so you would sleep with a happy dream? Do you remember the day I sold my wedding ring to buy you a math textbook because you cried when you failed?" She touched her chest. "I am not here to take. I am here to see if you are still you." Adana folded her arms. "Mama, please, we have a meeting in 1 hour." Benjamin lifted his chin. His words came out like ice. "Why can't you leave me alone? I'm ashamed to call you my mother." The housekeeper dropped a spoon in the kitchen. It rang like a tiny bell. Madame Sarah's shoulders sank. Tears gathered and fell. She put her bag on her lap with slow care, like someone placing a flower on a grave. "If you choose to forget," she whispered, "God does not forget. If I have wronged you, let God judge me. If I have not, let God judge you. Until then, may the joy of parenthood hide from you as you have hidden your heart from me." Adana's lips twitched, the way people smile when they think they have won. She reached for Benjamin's hand again. Madame Sarah turned the wheelchair. She moved toward the entrance, toward the long marble steps that led down to the drive. No one came to help. Pride held one person. Anger held another. Fear held the rest. At the top of the stairs, she paused. She took a breath. "God, keep my boy," she whispered. Then she pushed forward. The small front wheel lifted, caught on the edge, and shook. "Ma," Benjamin said, but too late. The chair tipped. A housekeeper screamed. Benjamin lunged. The wheelchair rolled, and the front wheel slipped off the marble edge. The scream tore through the mansion like a blade. The wheelchair slipped, bounced against the edge of the marble, and toppled. Madame Sarah's frail body followed, arms flailing in the air as gravity dragged her down the stairs. Benjamin's eyes widened in horror. "Mama!" he shouted, rushing forward. His heart pounded, but his legs moved too late. The housekeeper dropped the tray in her hands, glass shattering across the tiles. Adana gasped, but her feet stayed planted to the ground. Her face cold, unreadable. Madame Sarah hit the bottom of the steps with a thud that shook the room. Blood trickled from her temple onto the white interlock, staining it red. Her lips trembled, her eyes rolled back, and her hands twitched weakly before falling still. Benjamin fell to his knees beside her. "Mama! Please, no! Mama!" His voice cracked like a child's. He lifted her in his arms, and her silver scarf slipped to the ground. Blood streaked her forehead. The woman who had once fought off kidnappers for him now lay limp in his hands. "Call the driver!" Benjamin roared. "Get the car! Now!" The housekeeper scrambled, tears streaming, as she ran to fetch help. Benjamin pressed his hand to his mother's wound, but the blood kept flowing. His expensive white shirt quickly stained crimson. His heart hammered. He remembered the nights she stayed up with him when he was sick. He remembered her laughter when he got his first job. And now this. Stay with me, he begged. Mama, stay with me. Adana finally moved closer, but her voice was flat. Benjamin, don't panic. Let's just take her to the hospital. Her calmness cut him like a knife. Don't panic, he snapped. She's dying. Within minutes, the driver screeched into the compound with the SUV. Benjamin carried his mother inside, whispering prayers under his breath. God, please, don't take her. Not like this. Please. The car tore through the Lagos traffic, horns blaring, Benjamin cradling his mother in the back seat. He pressed her hand against his chest, hoping his heartbeat could remind her to keep fighting. Her eyes fluttered open for a moment. Her lips moved. Benjamin leaned close. Mama? Mama? I'm here. Her voice was weak, barely a whisper. Benja, remember, I gave everything. No, don't say that. Save your strength. Please, Mama. Her eyes closed again. Benjamin shook her gently, fear rising in his throat like smoke. The hospital smelled of antiseptic and urgency. Nurses rushed her into the emergency ward. Benjamin tried to follow, but a nurse held him back. Sir, please, wait outside. We'll do everything we can. He paced the corridor, his hands shaking, his shirt covered in her blood. Adana sat on one of the benches, legs crossed, scrolling through her phone as if nothing had happened. Benjamin stopped and glared at her. Do you even care? She looked up slowly, her eyes blank. Benjamin, don't start this now. She came here to cause trouble. Maybe this was God's way of ending the drama. His jaw dropped. Drama? That's my mother, and I'm your wife. Adana shot back. You need to focus on us, not her constant complaints. The words stabbed him deeper than he expected. He turned away, his chest heaving, and collapsed into a chair, burying his face in his hands. For the first time in years, Benjamin prayed with tears streaming down his face. God, forgive me. Forgive me for letting my pride blind me. 2 hours later, a doctor emerged, his face grave. Benjamin leapt to his feet. Doctor, how is she? Please, tell me she's alive. The doctor sighed, pulling down his mask. I'm sorry. The impact to her head was too severe. We did everything we could, but she didn't make it. The words shattered Benjamin's soul. His knees buckled, and he crashed to the floor. A wail tore from his chest, raw and broken, echoing down the sterile corridor. Mama! No, Mama! Adana stood quietly, watching him with no tears in her eyes. She placed a hand on his shoulder. Benjamin, be strong. At least the old woman is gone with her troubles. That statement pierced him like a dagger. He looked up at her with rage and grief mingling in his eyes. Without thinking, he stood and slapped her across the face. The sound echoed through the hall. Adana staggered back, her cheek blazing red. You heartless woman, he spat. My mother died because of my foolishness, and you dare call her trouble? I was blind, but now I see. You turned me against her. You poisoned my heart, but God is watching you. Adana said nothing, only folded her arms and looked away. Benjamin sank back to the floor, his sobs shaking his body. Nurses passed quietly, pity in their eyes. The once proud software engineer now looked like a lost boy, crumpled on the hospital tiles. 3 days later, Madame Sarah was buried in the village. The funeral was heavy with sorrow. Women wept openly. Men shook their heads and whispered, Ah, this life. The pastor spoke of sacrifice and love. But Benjamin's cries were louder than all. He knelt by her coffin, tears streaming, pounding his chest. Mama, forgive me. I failed you. You gave me everything, and I gave you pain. I should have carried you with honor, not shame. Please, forgive me. The coffin was lowered into the ground, and Benjamin nearly jumped in after it. Family members held him back, but his grief was unstoppable. She was my everything, he sobbed. Now she's gone, and I can't fix it. Even Adana's parents looked away, ashamed of their daughter's coldness during the burial. Adana, however, stood stiff, her face blank, her eyes dry. That night, Benjamin lay awake in his bed, staring at the ceiling, his chest hollow. Adana lay beside him, but he couldn't even look at her. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw his mother's face, pale and broken, whispering her last words. The guilt ate him alive. Days turned into weeks, weeks turned into months. Benjamin tried to bury his grief in work, but every success felt empty. Every award reminded him of the woman who never lived to see them. And then, the curse began to show. Adana did not conceive. Year after year, they visited hospitals, specialists, and prayer houses. Every doctor told them the same thing. There is nothing medically wrong with either of you. But Benjamin knew. Deep inside, he knew. His mother's words echoed in his head like a bell that never stopped ringing. You will never know the joy of parenthood unless I have wronged you. 10 years later, their marriage was a shadow of itself. The once powerful couple sat in silence at the dinner table, unable to look each other in the eye. Every hospital visit, every failed prayer, every tear that refused to bring a child widened the gap between them. One night, Adana broke. She woke Benjamin with sobs, clutching her chest. Benjamin, she whispered through tears, I was wrong. We were wrong. I destroyed everything. Your mother's curse follows us. We need to beg her forgiveness. Benjamin stared at her in the dark. His face was hard, aged with regret. I begged her at her grave, he said flatly. But the earth does not answer the way the living do. Still, the next morning, they traveled to the village together. They knelt at Madame Sarah's grave, their tears soaking the soil. They begged, pleaded, prayed, but months passed, and nothing changed. 2 years later, Adana made a decision that would break Benjamin's heart all over again. She woke before dawn, packed her bags, and placed an envelope on the table. With trembling hands, she shook Benjamin awake. Benjamin, she said softly, tears in her eyes, I can't do this anymore. Mama has refused to forgive. Maybe if we go our separate ways, she will have mercy. This marriage is cursed. Benjamin sat up, staring at the divorce papers in shock. Adana touched his hand one last time. I'm leaving. Goodbye. And just like that, the woman he thought he loved walked out, leaving him with nothing but silence, sorrow, and the ghost of his mother's curse. But fate was not finished with Benjamin yet, because in the ashes of his broken marriage, destiny was waiting to hand him the lesson of a lifetime. The rain had just stopped in Lagos, when Benjamin sat alone in his mansion, staring at the framed awards that lined his study. The air smelled of damp earth drifting in from the garden, but his soul was dry, brittle, and cracked. His wife, Adana, had left 2 years ago, and the silence in the house had only grown heavier with time. Everywhere he turned, he saw reminders of his mother. The rocking chair she once sat in stood in the corner. The scarf she dropped when she fell still hung folded in his drawer. Each memory was a needle, pricking him daily, whispering, Shame on you, Benjamin. For 10 years, he had lived childless. For 10 years, he had carried the curse of his mother's final words. He built companies, raised skyscrapers, and signed deals worth billions. But at night, when the world quieted, his bed felt like a grave. That evening, a soft knock echoed through the compound gate. Benjamin frowned. Few people dared disturb him directly. He had guards, staff, and assistants to filter visitors, yet the knock came again steady, unafraid. Who is that? He barked. The security man hesitated before answering. Boss, it's a young lady. She said she wants to see you. Benjamin scowled. At this hour? Yes, sir. She said her name is Juliet. Something stirred in his chest. Juliet? He didn't know any Juliet. He waved a dismissive hand. Send her away. But the guard shifted nervously. Sir, she doesn't want to leave. She said it's a matter of life and death. She even kneel on the ground. Benjamin rubbed his temple. Normally, he would ignore such desperation. It was common for strangers to beg him for money or jobs. Yet something about the persistence unsettled him. Fine, bring her in. Moments later, the guards led a young woman into the living room. She couldn't have been more than 20, slim, with delicate curves, dark chocolate skin, and braided hair that hung down her back. Her clothes were simple, a faded blue dress and worn sandals. But her eyes were fire. She dropped to her knees as soon as she saw him. Sir, please. My name is Juliet. I came because of your mother. Madame Sarah saved my life many years ago. The mention of his mother's name pierced Benjamin like a blade. He stiffened. What do you mean? Juliet clasped her hands together. When I was a child, I fell sick in the village. Everyone thought I would die. Your mother sold her last piece of land to pay for my treatment. She saved me, sir. She told me I must never forget, and that one day I might be the one to help her son. Benjamin's lips trembled. He turned his face away to hide the moisture gathering in his eyes. That woman, she gave everything, even to strangers. Juliet nodded, tears glistening. Yes, sir. And that is why I am here. I heard what happened. I heard about her curse. Sir, she visits me in my dreams, every night. She tells me to come to you, to bring you peace. Benjamin's heart skipped. Dreams? Yes. Juliet's voice shook but held conviction. Last night, she said, tell my son forgiveness is near, but he must open his heart to love again. Through this, my curse will lift. Benjamin staggered back into his chair, his hands trembling. You expect me to believe this? Juliet raised her face, and the sincerity in her eyes silenced him. I have nothing to gain, sir. I came with no money, no family backing, nothing. Only a message from the woman who saved me. Whether you believe me or not, I have delivered it. Is Most. For a long moment, the room was silent, except for the ticking of the wall clock. Then Benjamin asked quietly, and if what you say is true, what do you want from me? Juliet hesitated, then lowered her gaze. Nothing, sir. Only that you don't shut me out. Let me serve you, even if as a cleaner. Let me be near you until her message is fulfilled. Benjamin studied her. The simplicity of her request struck him. Most who came begging sought riches. She sought service. Against his better judgment, he whispered, very well, you may stay. Days turned into weeks. Juliet became part of the household, though she refused luxury. She cleaned, cooked, and even tended the gardens. But more than her work, it was her presence that unsettled Benjamin. Whenever the mansion's silence threatened to swallow him whole, Juliet filled it with soft hymns as she worked. When his nightmares returned, his mother's bloodied face, her whispered curse, Juliet prayed quietly in the adjoining room, and somehow, he slept again. Still, Benjamin battled his pride. He told himself she was only a girl, a distraction. Yet one night, he found himself watching her from the balcony as she swept the courtyard under the moonlight. Her face glowed with innocence and strength. Something stirred in him, something he thought had died with his mother, but guilt weighed him down. How dare you even think of happiness, after what you did to your mother? One Saturday, Juliet knocked on his study door. She carried a worn Bible in her hands. Sir, may I read you something? Benjamin looked up from his laptop, irritation flickering. But her eyes softened him. Go ahead. She opened to the book of Isaiah and read, Though your sins are like scarlet, they shall be as white as snow. Her voice trembled but grew stronger with each word. Sir, your mother has forgiven you. She told me in my dream last night, but you have not forgiven yourself. Benjamin's chest heaved. Tears stung his eyes. Juliet, do you know what it means to live with the ghost of someone you loved? To know you failed them? Juliet closed the Bible gently. It means you are human, but love is stronger than shame. That's why I'm here. The silence that followed was thick with emotion. For the first time in years, Benjamin broke down completely. He wept not the restrained sobs of a billionaire ashamed of weakness, but the raw cries of a son who had lost his mother. Juliet knelt beside him, her hand resting gently on his shoulder. It's okay, she whispered. You are not alone. Weeks later, something changed. Benjamin found himself waking each morning with purpose again. He walked the gardens with Juliet, sharing stories of his childhood. She listened with wide eyes, sometimes laughing, sometimes wiping his tears. But then came the turning point. One afternoon, Juliet fainted while working in the kitchen. The staff screamed, rushing her to the hospital. Benjamin rode with her, panic gripping his chest. He sat by her bed as doctors ran tests. When the doctor returned, Benjamin demanded, Tell me what's wrong with her. The doctor smiled. Relax, sir. She's not sick. She's pregnant. Benjamin froze. His mouth went dry. Pregnant? But how? The doctor chuckled. That's a question you'll have to answer yourself. Benjamin sank into the chair, his mind reeling. Pregnant? But He remembered the nights of comfort, the moments when grief made him weak, and her kindness drew him close. Shame burned his face, but beneath it, a spark of joy flickered. When Juliet awoke, he sat by her speechless. She smiled faintly. Sir, I told you your mother said forgiveness was near. She touched her belly gently. Maybe. This is it. Benjamin's throat tightened. Tears filled his eyes again. For the first time in 10 years, hope broke through the darkness. But what he didn't know was that this pregnancy would unleash a storm greater than anything he had ever faced, because Adana, his ex-wife, was watching from the shadows, and she was not ready to let go. The morning sun spilled across the Lagos skyline, its golden glow bathing Benjamin's mansion in quiet peace. Inside, however, peace was fragile. Juliet's pregnancy had awakened a new pulse in Benjamin's life, one that gave him hope, but also reminded him of the storm his mother's curse had left behind. Juliet had grown softer in her steps, her hand often resting unconsciously on her belly. Sometimes Benjamin caught himself staring, half in disbelief, half in fear. Could it truly be that his mother's curse was breaking? Was forgiveness finally reaching him through this child? But just as hope began to blossom, shadows stirred at the gate. Adana stood outside in a sleek black SUV, her sunglasses hiding eyes full of fire. 10 years of silence had hardened her. Though she had divorced Benjamin, she had never truly left his world. She watched from afar, following every whisper of his life, every headline, every rumor. When she heard of Juliet, the young woman living in his mansion, her pride shattered into rage. And when she discovered Juliet was carrying Benjamin's child, rage turned to venom. "Not while I breathe," she muttered as she stepped out of the car, her heels clicking against the marble driveway. "If I couldn't give him a child, no one else will take my place." The guards stiffened when they saw her. "Madam Adana, you don't live here anymore." Olga gave instructions. Adana waved them off with a cold smile. "Step aside. I built this house as much as he did. You think I'll be stopped by mere instructions?" Without waiting, she pushed past, her perfume trailing like smoke from a firestorm. Benjamin was in his study when the door burst open. His pen froze mid-signature, his eyes lifted, and his breath caught. "Adana?" She stood there, tall and regal, but her face carried bitterness, carved deep by years of envy. "So it's true," she spat. "You've replaced me with a child. A girl who should be in university is now carrying your bastard." Benjamin stood slowly, fury flaring. "You have no right to barge into my home. You signed those divorce papers with your own hand. Why are you here?" Adana's laugh was sharp, cold. "Why am I here? To remind you that I was your wife. For 10 years I endured shame because of your mother's curse. I was mocked in every gathering, called barren. And now you expect me to watch a little villager erase me from history." Juliet, hearing the commotion, appeared at the doorway. She wore a simple gown, her braids tied back, her face pale with nervousness. "Benjamin, what's happening?" Adana's eyes narrowed at her. "So, this is the girl. The replacement." She stepped closer, her voice dripping venom. "You think because you carry his seed, you have won. Let me tell you, this house will bury you before you give birth." Juliet flinched, her hand instinctively covering her belly. Benjamin moved quickly, standing between them. His voice was thunder. "Adana, not another word against her. You had your chance, and you squandered it with cruelty to the very woman who gave me life. Don't you dare lay your curses here." Adana's face twisted. "You call me cruel? When it was your mother who cursed us both. You think her ghost will let you rest? You think this child is a blessing? No, Benjamin. It's the start of your ruin." Her words hung heavy in the room. Juliet trembled, tears forming in her eyes. Benjamin clenched his fists, his heart pounding. "Enough. Guards." 2 guards rushed in. Benjamin pointed toward the door. "Take her out. She is never to set foot here again." Adana struggled, screaming. "You'll regret this, Benjamin. You'll regret ever crossing me. This girl will not live to enjoy what I was denied." Her screams echoed as she was dragged out of the mansion. Juliet collapsed into Benjamin's arms, her tears soaking his shirt. He held her tightly, whispering, "I won't let her touch you. I won't let her touch our child." But deep inside, fear gnawed at him. He knew Adana too well. She was not a woman to retreat quietly. That night, the mansion was restless. The staff whispered about Adana's return, their voices laced with fear. Benjamin tried to assure Juliet, but even as he kissed her forehead, his mind raced with shadows. At midnight, Juliet stirred from her sleep. She had dreamt again of Madame Sarah. In the dream, his mother stood by a river, her white scarf glowing under the moon. She spoke clearly. "The curse lifts, but beware. Darkness will fight to reclaim what love has restored." Juliet woke with a start, her hand trembling on her belly. She whispered into the dark, "God, protect this child." Adana's revenge came quickly. Within days, strange things began happening. The electricity in the mansion flickered off during the night. Juliet woke to find her clothes slashed in the wardrobe. Once, a dead bird was found at the doorstep, its blood smeared across the tiles. Benjamin tightened security, but the unease grew. Juliet grew pale, her health weakening under the stress. Doctors assured them the baby was fine, but Benjamin feared the stress alone might break her. One evening, he returned from a business trip to find Juliet sitting in the living room, tears rolling silently down her cheeks. In her hand was a letter. "What is this?" Benjamin asked, alarmed. Juliet handed it to him with trembling fingers. The handwriting was unmistakable. It was Adana's. "If you think you can erase me, you're mistaken. That child in her womb will never be born. Watch your back, Benjamin. Watch hers." Benjamin's blood ran cold. He clenched the letter in his fist until his knuckles turned white. Rage consumed him, but underneath the rage was dread. Adana wasn't bluffing. Determined to protect Juliet, Benjamin relocated her to his smaller private estate on the outskirts of Lagos, away from the public eye. He stationed trusted guards and surveillance around the property. "You'll be safe here," he promised, holding her close. But Juliet shook her head softly. "Safety is not in walls, Benjamin. It's in God. Your mother's curse is not the only battle. You must fight the darkness that pride and hate have brought into your life." Her words pierced him. That night, Benjamin knelt by the bed, something he hadn't done in decades. He prayed, not for money, not for power, but for forgiveness, protection, and strength. For Juliet, for their unborn child, for peace. Weeks passed, and Juliet's belly grew round. Despite the threats, Benjamin began to believe again in hope. He accompanied her to doctor visits, held her hand during restless nights, and even found himself smiling when the baby kicked for the first time. But Adana's shadow lingered. One rainy evening, as thunder rolled across the sky, Benjamin's phone buzzed with an unknown number. He answered cautiously. A cold voice slid through the line. "Benjamin, you thought you could hide her? You thought walls would protect her? I told you if I couldn't give you a child, no one else will. Get ready. The end is near." The line went dead. Benjamin's hands shook as he dropped the phone. He rushed to Juliet's room, his heart pounding. She was asleep, her hand on her belly, peaceful. He stood over her, whispering, "No harm will come to you. I swear it, even if it costs me my life." Alone, but in the shadows outside the estate, a figure watched. Adana's eyes gleamed like knives in the night. She was ready to strike. The morning was quiet, the kind of quiet that carried both peace and pain. The skies above Lagos were pale blue, brushed with thin white clouds, as Benjamin and Juliet drove toward the village where his mother lay. The road stretched endlessly, and with each mile Benjamin's chest grew heavier. Beside him, Juliet held his hand, her fingers warm, steadying him as memories threatened to overwhelm. When they reached the old churchyard, Benjamin stepped out slowly. The air smelled of damp earth and wild grass. Birds chirped in the distance, but to Benjamin, the silence around his mother's grave was louder than any sound. He stood frozen, staring at the simple tombstone. Madame Sarah, a mother who gave everything. His throat tightened. For years, he had avoided this place out of shame. Now, standing there with Juliet, he felt the weight of his failures pressing against his shoulders. Juliet knelt by the grave, her hand resting gently on the stone. "Mama Sarah," she whispered, her voice trembling, "your son is here. He has come to ask for your forgiveness again. And I am here too, to thank you for saving me when I was a child and for guiding me to him. Without you, neither of us would be standing here." Tears streamed down Benjamin's face. He fell to his knees. His voice cracked as he spoke. "Mama, I was blind. I chased wealth and pride, and I forgot you. I shut you out when you needed me most. I let Adana's bitterness poison me, and I dishonored the woman who sold everything to make me who I am. Mama, please, forgive me. I have nothing to give you now except my broken heart and my promise to never forget again." The wind blew softly, rustling the trees. For a fleeting moment, Benjamin thought he smelled her scarf, the faint, comforting scent of lavender she always wore. He closed his eyes, sobbing. Juliet wrapped her arm around his shoulders, whispering, "She has forgiven you. I know it. And now, we will honor her with how we live." They prayed together at the grave. When they finally rose to leave, Benjamin felt lighter, as if a burden he had carried for years had finally loosened. Time moved on, carrying with it both healing and new beginnings. The mansion that once echoed with loneliness now hummed with life. Juliet's laughter filled the halls, and Benjamin, once haunted by regret, found joy in the simplest of moments. Watching Juliet knit tiny clothes, feeling the soft kicks of their child against her belly, whispering prayers of gratitude late at night. Their long wait ended one rainy evening in a bright hospital room in Lagos. Juliet was in labor, gripping Benjamin's hand with all her strength. Sweat beaded her forehead, but her eyes burned with determination. "Breathe, Juliet. You're strong," Benjamin whispered, his voice shaking. He had faced boardrooms of billionaires without fear. But here, watching the woman he loved fight to bring new life, his heart felt like it would burst. Hours passed, long and agonizing, until finally the air was pierced by a cry, soft at first, then strong, insistent, demanding the world's attention. The doctor smiled, holding up a tiny bundle wrapped in white. "Congratulations, it's a girl." Benjamin's breath caught. His knees almost gave way. He reached out trembling hands as the baby was placed in his arms. She was so small, her skin soft as silk, her lips pursed as if she carried secrets from heaven. He wept openly, kissing her forehead. "Sarah," he whispered. "Her name is Sarah, after the woman who gave me everything." Juliet, exhausted but smiling through tears, touched his arm. "She would be proud, Benjamin. She would be proud to see you holding her granddaughter." Benjamin's heart ached. He wished with all his soul that Madame Sarah were alive to see this moment, to cradle her granddaughter, to bless her with the same love that had carried him through life. But even in her absence, he felt her spirit close, as if she were watching, smiling from beyond. Life had not left Adana behind. After leaving Benjamin in anger, she wandered through bitterness for years, blaming everyone but herself. But time and loneliness softened her pride. She met Jacob, a quiet man of faith who treated her with the kindness she had once despised. Against all odds, she remarried, and in that union, she found a strange peace. Months after Benjamin and Juliet welcomed Sarah, news reached them. Adana had given birth to a baby boy. She named him Kelvin. For Benjamin, the news stirred mixed emotions. He had loved Adana once, then hated her, then pitied her. But now, hearing she had found joy in motherhood, he felt only release. Perhaps, he thought, the cycle of pain had finally ended for them both. Juliet, ever the voice of gentleness, encouraged him to send a gift. Together, they sent baby clothes, toys, and a note. "May your son grow with peace and joy." From Benjamin, Juliet, and Sarah. Adana held the gift in her hands, tears rolling silently. For the first time in years, her heart softened toward the man she once vowed to destroy. One evening, Benjamin sat in the nursery, rocking little Sarah in his arms. The soft glow of the lamp painted the room in warmth. Sarah's tiny fingers wrapped around his thumb, and with each soft breath she took, Benjamin felt time itself slow. He whispered, "Mama, can you see her? Can you see your granddaughter? I named her after you, because you deserve to live on, not just in my memory, but in the life of the child you never held." His voice broke, and tears slid down his cheeks. "I realize now the price of my pride. I realize how deeply I hurt you. I can never repay it. But I will spend the rest of my life making sure Sarah knows your story, that she knows the sacrifices you made. She will grow up with love, Mama. The same love you gave me, when you had nothing." Juliet walked in quietly, smiling at the sight of father and daughter. She laid a gentle hand on his shoulder. "She will know, Benjamin, because we'll tell her, and we'll raise her to be everything your mother dreamed of." Benjamin nodded, his heart swelling with gratitude and grief all at once. He leaned down and kissed Sarah's forehead. "Thank you, Mama. Rest well. Your son has learned his lesson." The mansion that once held curses now echoed with lullabies. In the gardens, flowers bloomed brighter than before. In the living room, laughter replaced silence. And in the nursery, a baby named Sarah cooed, blissfully unaware of the storms her birth had calmed. Benjamin sat with Juliet by the window one evening, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and crimson. Sarah slept peacefully in Juliet's arms. As he reached over to hold them both, Benjamin whispered, "This is my second chance, my greatest gift, and I will never waste it again." Juliet smiled, her eyes glistening. Because love always wins, Benjamin, even over curses, and as the night settled over Lagos, Benjamin felt it deeply in his soul. Mama Sarah's spirit was at peace, and for the first time in many years, so was he. What is your view about this story? Where are you watching from? If you enjoyed this story, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel for more interesting stories.